always nervous about talking about innovation because I feel like it's a panacea. And I think that the problems that we are confronting right now are much, they require stronger medicine. So I know a bunch of you guys in this room, and I will just start by saying, Wendy, I totally believe in you, and I believe in what is going to happen with this community because you're doing the job that you're doing. This is a woman who is way ahead of the curve in terms of the lab model and bringing media makers and artists and technologists together. We live in that world, which really grew out of a lot of the early work that Wendy did a couple of jobs back. So I got your back, and I'm totally down with what you're going to pull off. You know, I like the idea of collision. And in some ways, innovation should be about collision. It should be about forces that do not align running into each other. And I'm from Oakland, and Oakland is about collision in many respects. And the diversity that's in Oakland, how many people are from Oakland here? Yeah. This is a place that subverts expectations all the time. I went to the first bilingual school in Oakland. It was called La Escuelita, and it was started by radical activists. But we couldn't afford our own principal, so the district made us share the principal, Mr. Mao, with the Chinese language school in Chinatown. And we played in the street. We didn't have any playground, so we had to play in the street. And moms would come down and like block traffic, like the early stop signs, but it would just be like moms screaming at cars because we were playing in the street. So that could have been a bad collision. But Oakland embodies that in many ways, and the country now is having to confront itself in a way that our community has had to for the last 40 or 50 years. And that collision generates deep, deep fear, deep anxiety, and deep suspicion. And we're living through that right now, not just the national election, but in families, in our public systems, which are not the subject of a single political party. Both parties have made very, very difficult choices, which we're now paying the price for over 2 or 3 generations when it comes to criminal justice, when it comes to labor, when it comes to environmental practice, when it comes to education. Everybody is guilty of making bad decisions. So I run the oldest nonprofit investigative reporting organization in the world, the Center for Investigative Reporting. We're kind of tied, and I might even give them the mantle. The Chicago Reporter, does anyone know the Chicago Reporter? Amazing organization, actually started in like 72, 73. But we've been at it for 40 years. And we have had to give birth to ourselves a number of times. So in our latest iteration, we have launched Reveal, which is a national public radio show and podcast, but it's also a platform. And it's a platform for other newsrooms to get their stories up to audiences all over the country. One of the things that has been the biggest force for change in our organization is actively collaborating with the arts. So about 3 years ago, we launched a project called Off Page, which Naima, who's I think doing social hair way in the back, there's Naima Jordan, amazing filmmaker, yeah. She was the project director for 1 season, but we started working with youth poets coming out of the Youth Speaks Network and bringing them into our investigations. We started embedding in their practice and in the Brave New Voices Festival, and new content came out of that. It also drew new synapses in the way that we think about how to bring our investigations to communities. We have a theater project called Storyworks, where we commission one-act plays based on our investigations, and then we stage them in front of live audiences. And we've now started to really bring this and scale it around the country. So we've done it in Kansas City. We just did it in New Jersey around an environmental set of reporting. And it's going to be in DC around policing in the community in February. So that collision of the arts and deep investigative reporting has been phenomenally important for us. But now I'm going to turn to the innovation part. Does anybody think that the internet is the last good thing humans are going to do? Are we done? Is this like, okay, we got the internet, we're done? Absolutely not, right? First of all, it's not evenly distributed all over the world. Second of all, there's very little innovation actually when it comes to hardware. The iPhone came out, I think, in 2007. We're still living in the world of touching glass, right? Nobody's invented anything beyond that yet in terms of the hardware we use every day. So what is the next great innovation? Who will generate that? Now, does anybody in this room not have a phone? So you're also participating in the largest government, corporate, and community surveillance project ever known to humanity. Right? We have a lot of questions to ask ourselves about what this technology can do for us, what it will do without us, what it will do against us. There are many, many fair questions about that. Now, the guy who's running the Tribune company, LA Times, Chicago Tribune, has made a bet on the future of AI. He said that he's going to use AI to produce 2,000 videos a day. So what world do we live in when the amount of consumption that's happening on the internet is fueled by, in many cases, what I would call low-value information calories, right? It's just feeding your habit of needing to touch your phone, right? The phone is the new cigarette. You got to get your fix in. Can you go an hour without touching your phone most days? Can't do it. You can't do it. If you're a parent, you can't do it because you're waiting for your kid to text you. If you work and need to check email, you can't do it because you cannot be offline. Is anyone here disciplined about not checking your email after hours? A few people. All right, more power to you back there. Not my staff, because I'm emailing, and I want information. Now, part of it is we work in an irrational system called nonprofits, most of us. And what nonprofits assume is that you are willing to work 5 times as hard as is rational because you believe in the mission. So we need that technology to help us out. But I don't know if we are using it sufficiently as a community, as the arts, as media makers, as journalists. I don't know if we are driving the design and the practice enough. We keep waiting for people to drop things on us. Right? Now, there has been a significant amount of funding to bring technology into our communities of practice. That has been money well spent. In many cases, we have led the push for what to do with this new technology. Right? People do not give hip-hop artists enough credit for innovating on the technology side. Right? It is as old as gaming, and it is worth more than gaming is. Right? But if you drive down to Silicon Valley, there is $100 billion of economy in video game companies. Show me the EA for hip hop. Hasn't happened. So we can generate value. Can we capture it back? That's a question. And then I would also ask, what is the value of real information? What is the social, civic value of unadulterated truth? Right? Could you imagine if we were having this presidential election and the only thing you could say is a fact? I mean, now we might be able to get a Cuban cigar. You couldn't get a Cuban cigar to save your life. This is a Whoopi Goldberg joke, by the way, you know, like, but how can you buy crack from Colombia? But imagine if no candidate, no pundit, nobody on a CNN panel that goes on for 4 hours could say any BS. What if the TV just went mute? It's like, eh. And my name is, you know, Joey. Why don't we expect the truth? Why don't we? Now, if you're online, oftentimes those low-value calories of information flying by, they're entertaining, I'm not going to lie. And I love my Warriors. I'm not saying it's going to change the world if we win again, but come on. But we have to evaluate and place a value that is real and that sticks on what it means to be true, what it means to be connected in communities. What Destiny does in Oakland, what it does in those young people's lives, that pays dividends for future generations in ways that we don't count, right? We all have to raise our budgets every single year. Is there anybody here who has an endowment that just covers your annual operating budget? Extraordinary. We're the only sector in this country's economy that does not depend on entitlements. Think about that. We got to earn it every single year. So when I think about this question of innovation, I actually would dial it back a little. I would say, where can we be provocative? Where can we force collision? If you're going to have, you know, the LA Times and the Chicago Tribune engage in AI production of videos for your low-value caloric intake of information, what is our provocation back against that? Right? There is no evidence that volume equals impact. And we've done a lot of work to try to understand the impact of our investigative journalism, and we think about it on 3 levels. The macro, are we changing laws? Are we changing meta attitudes about certain issues. The meso, are we changing workplaces? Are we changing individual communities? And then the micro, is this person's life different because of the reporting that we did? And when we look at it, there is a value in, but it is not the essential value of our reporting as to whether or not it got 100 million hits or 500. Because we are actually defeated, I think, if we are the independents, if we are the subversives, if we are challenging power and trying to bring truth up to the surface, then we have to dissuade ourselves from the idea that volume is the thing we're going for. Because there's no evidence for that. And in fact, communities are very good at finding and sharing. That is the most subversive act that is still alive, I think, in this country. It's that people will still lift up things that they believe in, whether or not the market points at that and says, this is what should be the truth. This is what should be the highest value activity. So it is a small world that we live in, actually. It is small acts of subversion that I think scale. And it is a radical optimism that is required to do any of this, right? But I don't feel like losing. Even though I would love to have the debate about how do we reframe climate change, because I totally agree. And at the same time, we're totally screwed, by the way, like it's terrible. I think that tension is that's the collision. And so I hope that this conference provides those opportunities. And we have, as an organization, really sought that out while holding our values, holding our practice at the deepest level true. And I feel very much in kinship with all the organizations, whether you're arts, media, journalism, we share the same essential faith. And whether you're the funder or you're the practitioner, whether you've been at it forever or you're just coming into the space, whether you're in prison or you're in the academy, we actually do have reasons to be in alliance together. And we actually do need an organization that's working on this. I think that's what the job of NAMAC is, right? Okay, thank you.